everyone, RogueGold here, welcome back to the Division 2. And in this one, we're going to be breaking down the recently released finale for Year 7 Season 1 of the game, titled Crossroads. And this is going to cover everything, from the Climax Mission itself to its master difficulty, hidden collectibles within the mission, talking about the story and lore, the breakdown and reaction there. To give you some of my top level thoughts off the bat here, unfortunately, this season wasn't really my favorite, and we're going to cover why. But yeah, still a lot to go over. I'm going to tell you right now, this is your spoiler warning. If you have not played and do not want to know anything about the finale for Year 7 Season 1 of the game or this season's lore and story overall, then click off now. You've been warned. Right now I'm trying to squeeze this video in alongside all of the other madness happening in the Division 2 world, so if you want to be sure not to miss any of it, then subscribe if you're not already. As we jump in, shout out and thank you to our channel members for your ongoing support. It means more than I can say. Thank you so much. But without further ado, let's get straight to it. Alright, now before discussing anything else, I wanted to address the major bug and progression blocker the players have unfortunately been encountering in this mission, and it involves being unable to kill the final boss. This is due to her disappearing in the smoke cloud that she does for the phases and then not reappearing later on. I think there's also certain issues where she becomes unkillable, stuff like that. I'll be honest here, my visibility on this is a bit limited and my info is a bit less reliable. I've cleared this mission 4 times now between the standard and master difficulties, and I've yet to encounter any of these kinds of bugs. Now that certainly doesn't mean that they do not exist or are not detrimental. This is obstructing players from completing the season overall, from getting the new Tinkerer mask, etc. So the first shout that I wanted to give here is that the devs are aware of this issue. They posted a Trello card about this early yesterday morning when the content went live. They also acknowledged on today's live stream that fixing this is a top priority right now, so stay tuned for when they're going to implement that. Now as far as workarounds that you can use for this bug in the meantime, one thing I wanted to shout out was a video posted from great friend of the channel, Sergeant Graybeard. I'll link his video below so that you can check it out, get the information, leave him some love. But his recommendation and the way that he found to work around this issue is that when you enter the arena, do not damage the boss whatsoever in that very first encounter and wave. Don't damage her until all of the NPCs that spawn in are dead. Once it's just her, then you can damage her and hopefully proceed as expected with the encounter. But yeah, to anyone who has run into this issue, good luck to you all, and hopefully the team can fix this up soon. Alright, moving on from that, I then wanted to talk about the overall season flow that we've had and the Climax Mission itself. As I mentioned in the intro, this time around wasn't really my favorite. To be honest, I was just mostly underwhelmed. I didn't find anything within this mission or the season overall to be very memorable. Now to be fair, the season had a hot start. There was a really great hook with Barden finally being awake after all these years. It was poised that he could finally give us all of this new revelatory info. And that was fun for the first few scouts, right, to see what he had to say. But as we went on, the scout objectives continued to mostly be uninteresting, in my opinion. Also, the little pre and post Anna lines that they started to do in the recent seasons were missing this time around. I felt that that really added to the immersion previously, so it was a real shame not to see them here. But even then, by the time we got to the climax setup, I thought that it was a really neat idea, right? Barden finally mentions this guy, and then he's like, who? Yeah, there's an asset that we didn't get extracted due to the whole complication in the plan with Barden going into a coma, Faye being killed. But by the end of it, not really much came from rescuing the manager, other than a lot of cat jokes, certainly. But we'll discuss story more in just a minute. I did want to take a moment to point out 2 very big highlights from the Climax Mission for me, because I still want to give props where they're due. For one, the visuals within this mission were very refreshing, in my opinion. I really liked all of the Black Tusk infrastructure that they had placed in. You know, that entire arena where you fight the first Warhound boss, that room was completely redone compared to the normal version of the mission. There was also some great set pieces, like when we see the helicopter get shot out of the sky. So, you know, when they're going to go and reuse old content, I really appreciate any efforts made to make it feel more refreshed and as new as it can be. And that was certainly my takeaway from here, so well done. Also, gameplay-wise, it was really cool to see a, new quote-unquote skill with the decoy trap hybrid that the boss used. It reminded me a lot of Keener's laser traps that they had in the Year 6 Season 1 Climax Mission at the Federal Bunker. And so again, I just appreciate the effort made to spice things up as much as possible. And these things did prove to be a challenge on higher difficulties. It was cool that there was 3 to 4 different variations of the traps between the explosive ones, the shock, the riot foam. But other than those 2 components, for me, this mission was just kind of forgettable, unfortunately. I did want to dedicate a quick section here to the master difficulty of this mission specifically. Unfortunately, this was my least favorite of the 3 of these that we've now had so far. and that really bums me out. I think Master had a really strong start in Year 6 Season 2. I loved the difficulty spike that you could feel compared to any of the standard difficulties. They had some additional complexity in there with stuff like extra turrets and terminals at every objective point, but the real icing on the cake was dedicated mechanics for Master with stuff like the sequence inputs at those different points. Now, I know that initial feedback from that mission caused them to rein in part of that because so many matchmade groups struggled with that mission specifically, but I feel like the pendulum has almost swung too far in the other direction, where now all we have really in Master is heroic difficulty with some extra elites and like one extra turret or objective at whatever part of the mission you're at. I mean, it almost feels like it doesn't even warrant its own difficulty name and distinction, you know? Last season's Master Mission was pretty similar to this, but at least that one had the Hunter encounter, and I think that is partly what spared some of my criticism of it then. But, you know, looking back to Year 6 Season 2, again, I was really excited to make a Master difficulty guide video back then, and it was very needed because there were so many, you know, intricacies and new things introduced in the Master version, and I still ended up doing one last season even though there was a lack of overall new mechanics. But this time around, I'm not even going to bother making one. I mean, why would I? All you really need to know is bring some protection from elites, expect some longer firefights, bingo. Now, I'll admit this could be a completely elitist take. I am much more on the hardcore scale of the player base, but Master difficulty was pitched as this pinnacle challenge for the season, right? It was supposed to be a very memorable experience, and for me, it just hasn't felt like that since its introduction in Year 6 Season 2. But yeah, overall, I would love some of your guys' thoughts on that. Now, before we move on from the mission and gameplay part of this, I did want to point out that there are 2 hidden collectibles within this mission. In order to get all 14 comms for the season, you actually don't replay the mission for boss kills like we're accustomed to. Rather, you pick them up at specific locations around the map. So the first one is going to be up the stairs to your left before entering the first boss arena that the Warhound is in. And then the second one is in that hallway enemy arena, the space right before the final boss fight. When you're in there, if you go up to the little balcony, you'll find this door on the far side is openable, and you'll find the comm within. Alright, now to close out, let's break down story. As mentioned before, this season's comms with Barden certainly had some gems in there. There was some great information about stuff like the Black Tusk bunkers, about stuff like Diamond. So we were getting those week to week, and things were coasting along until we learned, hey, there's this asset that needs to be extracted. He's very important to the overall plan and movement that we're working towards. So we rush to the Potomac Event Center, we rescue him. As we go through, we learn about his cat, a lot, and by the time the mission wraps up, there's really little to no information given. There's no payoff, we didn't get any kind of cutscene at the end of this. Even the comms this time around didn't provide any kind of like epilogue or tease as to what's next. Really, the only morsel of information that we get is from the final line that Manny gives you when you finish the mission. Take a listen to this.
Without a logistics manager, the Black Tusk's operations will likely suffer setbacks. Good. I took another look at that intel you retrieved earlier. Seems Sokolov Concern has been providing equipment to more than just the Black Tusk. Thank you, Agent. You did great.
Now, I've seen some people saying that this is just in reference to the Black Tusk supplying the hyenas. That was something that was revealed back during the original Division 2 campaign. I'm not so convinced, right? We and Manny already know that. And he said specifically that this was gleaned from the new intel that we recovered. I imagine this is going to be a plotline that they will pick up next season, since extracting the manager apparently cripples the Black Tusk supply lines. But with that being one of the only real pieces of info we got from this finale, it kind of left me thinking, where are we going with all this? Now, I know that a lot of people have had their complaints and critiques about the story for quite a while now, which is totally fine. This topic is more subjective than most, and I've gone on record to say that overall, I have been more invested in the story and lore of the Division 2 post-Season 9, when the game came back, than I was during, let's say, Years 1 and 2. You know, learning about Cal and Natalia, who the puppet masters are, building up this resistance, making a plan to strike. I like all of that. But really, since the Year 5 finale, when Keener returned to the scene, it kind of feels like we've just been spinning our wheels. As of Year 7 Season 1, why is Keener still locked in the basement? Have he and Barden spoken yet? If it was not just to stall for the DLC release, why did we spend all of Year 6 tracking down these rogues when not much came from that? And maybe most importantly, why did virtually nothing happen this season? I'm fairly certain that the end goal here is still leading to that kind of bunker raid and Black Tusk confrontation that they've been teasing for a long time. You know, the November event that they tease in the Crossroads novels. If you know, you know. But really, you know, I think the devs struck a pretty decent story momentum in the periods between Season 9 and Year 5 Season 3. Regularly enough, there were big events happening, revelations, these different skirmishes, but really since then, it's felt a bit like we're just padding time and seasons to fit the live service model, which is unfortunate. Now don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean I hate the story or don't like the overarching themes. I'm still very excited to get to that endgame point eventually, but as far as what we're doing in the interim, that has begun to wear off on me, just a bit. Well, my friends, that is everything I've got. That is my recap and breakdown of the Division 2's Year 7 Season 1 finale. Unfortunately, a bit less enthused this time than usual, but I'm still looking forward to what's ahead. I'm hoping that we see some exciting new revelations, maybe next season. At this point though, I turn it all over to you guys. I would love to know your thoughts on any and everything that we covered in this video. What do you think about the gameplay itself of the Climax Mission? What do you think about the Master difficulty this season? What do you think about the overall and ongoing story and lore implications? Let me know. I'll be curious to read through it. That is going to do it for me on this one. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you back soon. Until then, RogueGold.